We have our student representative, Ria.
Hi
Welcome.
everyone, my name is Ria Kamani. So the class of 2022 are thinking of doing a dance, but we decided that it's not feasible because they're still the freshman class, which is like newer to how things work. So we decided to give them the Blaze Pizza fundraiser with Rachel Rigoli, who was a Burlington High School student last year. And they're also thinking of doing a Spirit Week in the winter. Class of 2021 are planning to do stickers with 2 different designs and t-shirts for the pep rally. They're also doing the snowball dance again. Then class of 2020 is doing a volleyball game in November and a game night. They're also going to work with the sophomore class on the snowball dance. Class of 2019 have discussed the pep rally, and they're also designing senior shirts. And they're thinking of doing it with Mr. Missler to make it a collective school organized t-shirt. The entire student council are going to work on the cookie dough and pie fundraiser, and the pies will come Friday, November 16th. And then we're also thinking of having a field day on November 16th. We'll have different games on the football field, and the prizes will be something tied to the pep rally. The profits will be donated to Dottie or Wilfredo Escobar. And that's it.
Please, do you have any dates with regard to the Blaze Pizza, or is there a way?
They're still in discussion about the
Okay.
dates because we just passed along that to the freshman class because they weren't sure on what type of events that high school students can do so
Okay.
far. So-
And then for the cookie and pie, is there a link if people are watching and would like to? Is there a place?
There is a place for that, but usually the students should contact anyone who's like wanting to buy the cookie dough and pies. So we're given just like a form, and we can go to our neighbors and teachers and anyone who's like wanting to buy the cookie dough and pies.
Okay.
Well, if I could add,
Yes.
I don't have any students in the school system.
I'm willing
so
to sell
would you-
any pies.
Would you share, yes, would you please share, and my email
I
is
will.
on the BPSK 12, okay? Thank you.
Thank you.
And I was also wondering when the volleyball game, you said November, is there a date
Yes.
picked yet?
They're not sure on that
Okay.
either because there's also a volleyball game that's tied with the pep rally, and they're not sure if they can also do one at the
Okay.
same time.
Thank you.
Ms. Vanko?
Is the cookie fundraiser, is that the freshmen that are doing that?
That's the entire student body. That's actually
Oh, it's-
our fundraiser that makes like the most money
Okay,
in all
so
of our
it's
fundraisers.
all the
so.
grades?
Mhm.
Okay,
Was
that
that-
means I'll have 3 people selling
And the
them.
exec board.
Was I reading some frustration in your voice with the freshman class? Are they having trouble sort of getting
Um,
organized?
A little bit, but we're just helping them along. So I'm planning on sitting on like some of their meetings if I can. They're usually going to be during my classes, but I'll see if one of them happens to be during my study. I'll go to one of them.
Help them along a little
Yes.
bit? That's nice.
Any other questions?
Any other questions?
All right, thank
Good.
you.
Thank
Very
you.
encompassing of all the grades. Thank you. Also, under subcommittee reports, I just want to mention that the Hall of Fame had their 14th induction ceremony last week, and I was lucky enough to attend. Thank you for not being able to go. It's just a wonderful event because you just realize how much they have accomplished and really have stopped time with their accomplishments and set that into the record books to put it out there for others. And what I found even more incredible or appreciative is just how nice they are. You're not just an athlete, but a community member and representing Burlington. And it's just great role modeling for our students coming through behind them and just really putting that all together. So I just want to say it was a lovely event. The Hall of Fame committee did a wonderful job. I've been to a number of these from college to high school levels, and it was by far right up there with one of the most professional events, inductions that I've seen. So, and somebody to my left was there for a different reason.
If I may, Madam Chair, I just want to express my thanks also, not only to the chair who attended the meeting and gave a phenomenal speech. I was privileged to be a parent of someone who was inducted on Thursday night. And it really is a great event that I think Eddie Gillis came up with the idea many, many years ago when he was our athletic director, because I think they had one in Wilmington and we didn't have one, and he decided to organize some subcommittees, and we got a lot of graduates who were willing to invest a lot of their time and effort into creating the Burlington Hall of Fame. And over the years, it's just become a really special event, and it kind of brings generations together. Over the years, they've inducted football teams from the 1950s and the 1960s. This year, they did the football team from 2006, and I knew probably most of the players on that team, and their parents were there, and their coaches were there. And I was thinking how lucky we are in Burlington to have people that are willing to, donate their time, really, to put these special events together. And, the Hall of Fame committee and Susan Turnquist and all of the volunteers that work countless hours to make it a really special event. Just a lot of thanks goes out to them. And they're doing it now, I think, every other year. And it's just a great event. If you ever have an opportunity to attend one of these events, you'll really be thankful that you went to it. I actually saw Al Perry. I don't know if any of you remember Al
no
Perry.
kidding.
But Al Perry was there, and Paul Sheehan, who's been kind of, I think, the unofficial head of the Hall of Fame committee, told me that he's attended, I think, every one of these events, and he was inducted as a benefactor. And Al Perry was an assistant principal at the high school back in the 60s and the 70s, and he was also a very famous member of the Perry family from Somerville. And Al was a phenomenal right-handed pitcher for Somerville High School, and they were dominant back in his day. And of course, his brother Ronnie Perry and Ronnie Perry's son, Ron Perry Jr., I think he played for the Celtics, and he played baseball as well. They're just a very athletic family, and it was just a wonderful experience to connect with Mr. Perry and and other generations throughout Burlington's history. So, great event. Thank you to the Hall of Fame committee and all of the volunteers. Some of them have worked tirelessly behind the scenes to put the dinner together. But it was at the Cafe Escadrille, and the Escadrille did a great job as well, like they always do, putting it together. So it was a special night, and I want to thank the chair for being there and for joining us. And just can't wait for 2 years from now. I'm going to definitely attend the next one. So thank you.
Other subcommittee reports?
Just, again, Madam Chair, just connecting the conversation to something later on the agenda, I think when I attend the Hall of Fame dinners, I think we get to hear about people who are very successful, but part of the importance of athletics is that all kids can participate, and I think that Burlington is one of the few communities that doesn't have fees associated with participation in athletics and the performing arts and everything like that, and I just think that's really important to note, and I think that's largely because of the values of the community, but I think this board has also been a strong proponent of not having fees to have students participate in the extracurriculars, which are so incredibly important. So you'll be hearing a lot about social emotional development of kids today, and I think you'll be hearing about something about school finance too, but I think opportunities to participate when in high school on things like athletics and musical programs and in art programs, I think is as important as a lot of the academics that we're putting forward. So again, thank you for continuing to promote that value.
Any other subcommittees? All right, seeing none, Ways and Means is enjoying the night, hopefully, after a very busy fall. So we appreciate their time.
And Madam Chair, again, just to Ways and Means, we had discussed it, but I just want to say publicly, we obviously need to do a financial report once a month. We are working on that. That'll be in the second meeting in October. It'll be in our November meeting, and it'll be in our December meeting. So again, the 3 next school committee meetings, because I think we only have one in November, Sharon, and one in December, there'll be a financial report at each of the upcoming meetings, again, and that'll be the differential, and you'll be able to give some feedback on the forum, but that'll be October, November, and December.
Great, thank you. Mrs. Malko?
On that topic, I had a couple of notes of things that I was hoping we could include in that financial report at the next meeting. And one of those would be an update on where we are with the student activity accounts that we were consolidating and closing all the little accounts. So that would be one thing. The second thing would be, do we have planned an update on the revolving accounts, and when is that? Is that October, November?
Again, Nicole can correct me, but I think Mr. Powers identified the priority list, and I think he's looking through the 5 accounts that he mentioned, and I haven't seen any progress report from him on those revolving accounts. I'm not sure if they'll be ready in October or not. We can certainly reach out to him and get a schedule, but I think he did sort of the priority report to the committee in August, and I know he's doing that work. I'm just not sure at what point he'll be ready to report out to the committee.
So I think when we talked about the revolving accounts in the spring, or last winter and spring, we did actually say that there would be an update at a certain point in time. And I don't remember exactly, but I think it was either October or November. So could you check on that?
Yeah, and we can give you a balance on the revolving accounts with the financial report. I mean, that's relatively straightforward, but I'm saying the Powers work was to actually do some more targeted looking at the revolving accounts. So again, we'll get a status on that, Mrs. Monaco, but we'll also get a balance at the next meeting as well.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be the procedures are in place, we're following the procedures, that kind of an update. And that's really what I'm looking for, is some updates on the things that are in process. First of all, the student activity accounts. Second, the updates to procedures on the revolving accounts. And then an update on where we are with the online purchasing system and whatever other brand-new things have been initiated this year, that we can have an update on the status of them.
Okay.
All right?
And I'm assuming the format that you would want would be in more of a structured format, like a PowerPoint, because we can share the information that way
Well,
best.
I think there are people, especially Ways and Means members, that want to know an outline of where we are with these things and when they're going to be completed. Like, at what point will everyone be on the online purchase system? How many groups are on it now? When will it? So sort of a calendar, like that email I gave you at that meeting from John Isla, where he was looking for a calendar of when to expect these things to be done.
Okay.
Yes. Ms. Simon?
Sort of as a follow-up to that, if we could, I mean, I don't need a PowerPoint per se, but if the information can be presented in a way that is, not just available to us. We did have a resident request more posting at our meetings, like on the screen, so that people who are watching at home can have a little more information. But even to the point where that report then can easily be posted on the website, and we'll say where it's going to be posted, and that way, if it's presented to us in a well-organized way, then we can learn from it, but we can also, it'll be public information that we can share with people on the website, or hopefully on the video during our meetings. Is that, yeah.
Do our best, and
Yeah,
again,
okay.
you can certainly shape that as we move forward.
Okay.
So.
All right, thank you. Instruction technology. Dr. Conti, Francis Wyman with us tonight.
We are fortunate to have Francis Wyman with us tonight. So I'm going to turn it over to Patrick, so I'll give Patrick a chance to actually speak at one of these meetings, so.
Before I fall asleep.
Thank you, but, and I'll thank everyone as they come up, but it's great to see the Francis Wyman, some folks here representing your colleagues, so thank you very much.
So again, getting back to last meeting where we said we want to highlight more of what's happening in the schools, Francis Wyman answered the call today. Again, thanks for being out at night. I know you have a busy day as well, so I just want to invite Mrs. McDonald and Mr. Doiron up to kind of tell us who they have with them, and I know that we're going to see a focus on some zones of regulation training, I think. We're going to see responsive classroom. I see one of my responsive classroom classmates from the summer. And we're going to hear about some social emotional learning best practice that's happening over there too. So thanks for bringing all these folks out tonight.
Okay. Good evening. I'm Nicole McDonald, the principal of Francis Wyman, and thank you for inviting us to the table to shine and to share some of the wonderful things that are happening at Francis Wyman. So our focus tonight is on social emotional learning, which is certainly one of our big district focus areas on our plan for success. And I'm fortunate tonight to have some talented team members who have answered the call. So certainly a great shout out to Daryl Doiron, who helped to coordinate the presentation and gathered lots of valuable examples of some of the things that you'll see tonight. In addition, Amy Kucha and Kristen DeMarco from our special ed programs are here with us. Thank you. Laura Agostino and Sid, I wanted to say Amico, but I knew that was wrong, Sid D'Amico. Fifth grade classroom teachers who are using some amazing things in their classroom, and Kerry Marsh and Irene Farmer, first grade teachers who are also incorporating some great strategies. So I'm being intentionally vague so that they can highlight some of the great things that they're doing. So again, a shout out to them, as well as the entire Francis Wyman team who opened up their classrooms and was willing to share some of the great things that are happening at our school. So thank you.
All right, good evening, everyone. So I want to talk about the school's plan for success. Two of the four objectives that we have, the things that we're going to introduce tonight address these. So the first one talks about providing engaging, rigorous, relevant programming to meet academic, social, and emotional needs of students. So the three programs that the teachers will talk about tonight are really directed towards the social and emotional needs of students. The next one, building relationships. So mostly among staff, students within the school, these programs are addressing those needs that students have and building those relationships. So I'm going to go ahead and invite the teachers presenting on zones of regulation up first.
Hello. Perfect. Thank you. Hi, I'm Kristen DeMarco, special ed teacher at Francis Wyman.
Hi, Kristen.
Amy Kucha, another special ed teacher at Francis Wyman.
Carrie Marsh, first grade at Francis Wyman.
Well, so we're going to do a quick overview of the zones of regulation. It is, sorry, let me know if I need to get closer to this. A curriculum that special ed staff was trained on 3 years ago that we've subsequently implemented within the classrooms and co-taught with the general ed staff. So it's used in several different ways. We use it individual for some students, and we use it in the special ed programs as well as in the general ed classrooms. And basically what it is it's a curriculum, a social emotional curriculum that teaches feelings, and all the feelings are correlated to a certain color, a certain zone. So it's teaching self-regulation by categorizing the way we feel through different colored zones. So Carrie has a quick visual she's going to put up, and this is an example of something we use in the younger grades, so kindergarten, first grade. So each colored zone, green, blue, yellow, and red, are taught with the feeling words that go with it. So for example, if you're in the green zone, you might be feeling calm. You're ready to go. You're ready to be at school. You're ready to learn. You could be happy. And just generally, like, that's that's basically the goal of being in class and ready to learn. The blue zone, as you'll see here in some of these pictures, you might be feeling sad, you might be feeling sick, you might be feeling tired, or just bored, and that's okay. We all feel that way, right? So we teach the kids that, and even that's, no, I'm sorry, yeah, certainly not here. No one's in the blue zone here. Yeah. Green zone only, sometimes maybe yellow. Then the yellow zone, we have frustrated, we have silly, we have starting to get a little bit out of control. Your motor is starting to run a little bit high. And then red zone, angry, you're yelling, and you generally need to stop before you make a poor decision. So we basically teach the feeling words in correlation to how your thoughts and your feelings kind of also how your body is kind of feeling during these times. And within each zone, there's different coping strategies with the end goal of being self-regulation. So clearly it's going to look different in a kindergarten or first grade classroom versus a fifth grade classroom. And kind of the goal behind it is to teach these kids that it's okay to feel any of these ways, but how to utilize a strategy to kind of calm yourself down, especially at school, but even outside of school. So for example, you know, it's okay to be in the yellow zone if you're at recess or you're at gym and you're running and you're moving. Totally okay. When it's not probably a great time to be in the yellow zone is in the library or when you're supposed to be, you know, listening to your teacher, which our kids never, ever do that. They're always in the green zone all the time. So just a quick few things, just takeaway points with the zones, because I could keep going forever and ever, it's important that the students know that we as adults also feel like we're in all of the zones. So in a minute, Amy's going to explain kind of what you're going to see, but you're going to see my name right in that yellow zone. I was frustrated last week. Daryl snapped a great picture at that time, and I modeled, I'm getting frustrated. I put myself right in that yellow zone. And the kids, and it does teach a little bit of, you know, kind of the empathy piece of they'll stop and kind of self-regulate too, which is nice. So it's okay to be in any zone. All adults are in all of the different zones too, but it's realistically important to learn coping strategies so you're becoming back to green zone calm, or just walking away or taking space or taking some deep breaths if you need to, so you don't make a poor choice. And what else? It gives a common language between teaching staff, students, parents at home. A lot of times, you know, kids will initially associate red zone with poor behavior or challenging behavior, and it's realistically not about, you know, we're trying to teach parents and families. It's not about punishing students for feeling like they're in the red zone. It's okay to be angry. How are you reacting to your anger? And teaching that coping strategy. So this kind of all ties into morning meeting, which you're going to hear about in a minute, because a lot of the classrooms are implementing this during morning meeting, as well as mindfulness and grounding yourself and kind of using some mindful breathing during different times or different mindfulness activities that you can do as coping strategies. Yeah. So without further ado.
So on the next slide, you're going to see 3 examples of ways that the zones are being used in the classroom. The first example is going to be a 5th grade classroom where they're in a circle passing around, I believe it's like a little fidget tool, and they're saying what zone they're in and why. So again, that's a higher level skill, so we'd expect that more from our upper grades. The next example is going to be a 2nd grade classroom where it's actually right up there. The students go up and they pick their card, and they just put whatever zone they're in, and the teacher probably will check in with that student if they're in maybe one of, if they're not in the green, or maybe even check in with them if they are in the green. And then the last example is Kristen's classroom, where you just saw the poster where it's just a simple pictures, and they put their names into the zones. And that's, all of these are up available to the students so they can check in throughout the day. So this is something that, we are doing it in morning meeting, but it becomes part of the classroom climate and community, so. Oh. And while they're putting the sound on, we also brought some more examples that you guys are more than welcome to look at. We have the curriculum. We have some of books that we've made for the kids. We have some individual check-ins that they can do with strategies. So we have a lot of different tools. And again, it looks different through all the grades.
And also, it's not just being implemented in special ed and general ed. It's different pieces of special ed too. OT, how's your body feeling? How's it moving? Speech, teaching basic feeling words. It's kind of it's being used everywhere. Yeah.
Because the Red Sox. I'm in a blue zone because I'm tired and I didn't get much sleep last night.
Any questions about the zones?
I just have some comments, because thank you all. And I think the bottom line that these guys always teach me is behavior is communication. So one of the ways the kids communicate is through their behavior. And so it's a learned, just like learning reading, or us having to teach reading or teach mathematics, teaching behavior is important. And integrating this across, I think, classrooms and subjects, I'll use that term loosely, but I think you guys have done an art show now for 2 years where you've connected the zones, and it's great. We'll send an invitation to you all. It happens in the spring. So do you want to describe just the art show briefly, just because I was just so impressed with that?
Sure. Like Dr. Conti said, we've been doing it for the last 2 years. What we did the first year was the kids were just learning the zones. We were just becoming familiar with the curriculum. So it was just, we found art projects that were associated with the red, yellow, green, and blue zones. And we, it was a really, really great thing. Some of my students have challenges when it comes to, work production. So giving them the opportunity to produce these beautiful pieces of artwork, we collaborated with the art teacher at Francis Wyman, and it was really great. Last year, since the kids were familiar with the zones, we're like, okay, they know the zones. Now we have to work on the coping strategies. What do we do when we're in the yellow zone? So a lot of the artwork that we did was focused around coping strategies. So we were teaching the coping strategies, having an art project to go along with it. And for this year, we're going kind of in the same direction as well. So, and also focusing on some other social emotional skills such as, self-esteem, positive self-talk, really trying to boost their, self-esteem in themselves and their artwork, and, letting them feel successful and proud of something. It's a really, really great thing that we started.
It's amazing. The art show is amazing.
Mr. Murphy.
Just a quick comment. I think it's a very interesting way of doing things, and I applaud you for that. From my perspective, it's useful because now I have a zone for Mrs. Monaco. I've been sitting here for many years, and I never knew how to express it, but now the red zone.
We can leave you with some strategies, Mrs. Monaco.
I thank
I've got
you.
a zone for him too, but it's not up there.
We have this whole book. This will be good. You can just move the Velcro
Or
over.
this sometimes works well. Yeah.
We'll take all of those, thank you.
I just want to say, like true teachers, when the volume didn't work, you just jumped right in and started explaining something else. You used to have Ann jump in if something's not going right to keep us all interested the way you do with the children. So that as an aside, I found that very interesting and smooth how you did that. Mr.
Just a quick comment. It must be
Nelson?
great for teachers when you have students telling you how they feel by putting the cards up, and then you can target those students who might be starting out their morning with some difficulties, something might have gone wrong at home, and you can, get right to it early on in the morning meetings that I know you all do, and I think it's great. I think it really is.
It's a great way to give kids who have difficulties expressing how they feel to be able to actually express how they feel.
Yeah.
If they, some kids, they can't say they're angry, but they can say, I'm in the red. And we know, like, what we need to do to help them to get back into the green.
That's a good program. I'm really impressed. Thank you.
One of the greatest things that I've taken from this is, I've had the opportunity to work with Kristen for the past 2 years. It's turning into more of a co-teaching model we found, especially this year. And I had no training in this whatsoever as a first grade teacher. But working with Kristen over the past couple of years, she started implementing the zone across our whole entire classroom. So it's not just her targeted group. It's 18 first graders that are now getting it, and now getting it in second grade and then fifth grade. So it's definitely a language that's building throughout Francis Wyman and growing.
Ms. Simon?
Please do let us know when you have the art show. I'd like to be
Absolutely.
invited. And I don't know if, I might want to ask this later, but are these zones of regulation being used in all the classrooms at Francis Wyman? And if so, if not, are there plans for that to go? And is this happening in the other schools?
So all the special ed teachers, like Kristen said, we were trained 3 years ago in it. In the last couple years, we have conferences at Francis Wyman. So Kristen and I have been part of the group of, teaching the general ed teachers about it. And there are other teachers, other special ed teachers who are, working with their grades as well. So we'd love for it to be something that, the whole school does and maybe the whole school district does, because, again, the kids are going to go to middle school. So hopefully, they have that common language. At BPSCon, I also ran a training on it as well. So two of them, yes.
It was so popular the first day, she had to do a second one.
Ms. Simon, I would say it's not completely as clean as literacy, but I would say sort of our district-wide social-emotional program, our Tier 1, we would call it, would be responsive classroom, and that's sort of the common language. Zones is what I would consider a supplement to that. So I think everyone's going to eventually have to learn it, but it would call it more of our Tier 2 strategy would be our zones of regulation. So it is part of our common language. But I would say a lot of it starts in there. It's hard to separate the two because they're almost a continuum, right? So you would start with the morning meeting and then sort of incorporate zones there. But I would say the sort of the Tier 1 curriculum would be more of the responsive classroom, and then the zones language, I think, would incorporate there. And while it did start in special ed, I do see it starting to get legs outside of special ed and then sort of incorporating that. But it would be a more intensive supplement to the responsive classroom.
So with all the teachers that you've been training, would you say that it's happening in all the schools probably? Maybe not as many teachers, but I'm not sure who to ask my question of.
Well, again, I think it's growing, right? And again, I said I'd let Patrick talk, so I'm sorry. But I think, kids aren't taught in a vacuum, they're taught with teams. And so I'm assuming if there's a child who you all are working with across teams and you're going to try some zone strategies, then you would incorporate the zone strategies in the language, right? So.
And I will say, I know that Amy and I have, special ed program classrooms, K to 2. But there are other staff members who are also implementing it in classrooms where they're not servicing students. So we have a social worker at Francis Wyman who's implementing it in some of the classrooms. Special ed, OT, PT, speech are all implementing it, specialized in special ed, but it is crossing over to the general ed classrooms, definitely. I think it's just more about exposure. Amy and I now are finally feeling comfortable after 3 years with it. So I think that given time and training for other staff, we'll start seeing it more and more in the schools.
Nice, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You need a new zone for him.
Thank you. Yeah, it has come to our staff. We tend to talk about the zones also as to what zone we're in. But Ms. Kucha and another teacher, Ms. Casey at the school, also presented at BBS-Con this summer. And I sat in on the meeting. We had many teachers, like you were asking, even at the middle school, asking about the program. As quick check-ins, just to see how the kids are doing, because often you have kids sitting in front of you, you wonder why they're not doing work, and this is a nice quick check-in, kind of to find out maybe where their thinking is. So, all right, so the next program we're going to be talking about is the responsive classroom. To answer your question about teachers, all teachers are doing this for 25 minutes in the morning. This has been a training that's been offered for the past 3 years, I believe, consecutive 3 or 4 years. So majority of teachers throughout the district are trained on this.
Welcome. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Laura Agostino, 5th grade.
I'm Sid D'Amico, 5th grade, Francis Wyman.
So we are talking about responsive classroom. The responsive classroom, the morning meeting has 4 components. The first one is a greeting and then a sharing.
And then there's a group activity, as well as a morning message. All of everyone, as Mr. Doran said, everyone is doing it. I did do the class this summer with Patrick, and it was great. I really felt that I was prepared taking this course. I really felt prepared walking into my classroom, knowing that every morning for 25 minutes I was going to be, doing responsive classroom. So I did enjoy it, and I really got a lot out of the course that was offered and kind of being ready for it. So the video that you're going to see will show kids across Francis Wyman, different grades, doing pieces of the responsive classroom and morning meeting. This is silent on purpose. I'll talk about that in a minute.
My favorite birthday party was when I went to Altitude and I invited Bobby and Cole and a lot of other people that you don't know in place. When we were at Aaron's birthday we were kicking the balls, and two of us almost broke the lights up there. They were shattering. Even the birthday girl broke one too. She kicked the balloon. And then it went right to the ceiling, and it was like, the lights were shaking. We were scared that they were going to fall. We're going to switch to Ni hao Sai. Ni hao Sophia. Ni hao Liam. Good morning. We like to go fishing a lot, me and my dad, and we catch a lot of big fish. Once I went fishing with my friend, and we caught a 3.5 pound bass over for Christmas jelly.
So the activity, you'll notice that there's so many different activities. Some are standing up, some are sitting down, some are moving around, some have chants, some are dancing, some involve, kind of partner things, some involve the whole class. On the one that I did, I decided to incorporate the activity to get to the circle. So instead of them just walking over, let's meet, they actually have to do something to get into their circle. So the one they were doing, they had just cards with decimals, and so I incorporate the content. We're learning place value and decimals, so they all had one, and they couldn't talk. Sometimes I let them talk. This particular one, I had them do silent because they had the visual, and they just kind of end up using other strategies. And they had to get from least to greatest. And I didn't for this one, but sometimes they love getting timed, and so then they try to see if they can beat their score another day, and they like doing that. So I incorporate some of the activities getting into the circle, and I find they don't tend to always go sit with their friend beside them, because that was happening in the beginning. And it just kind of gets them to have like a goal in getting there. So there are, like I said, many activities. You do really get a feel for how they are in the morning and how they're kind of feeling. So even though we might not be doing zones in all the classrooms, I definitely, that interaction first thing in the morning and how they kind of walk over, or if someone's kind of laying back and kind of stand, you really do get a feeling of what kind of morning they're having. And so that's nice too, that we get that time together first thing in the morning. For us at Francis Wyman, it's first thing in the morning, and because especially in 5th grade, for some of us, at 9 o'clock, they leave us and they start moving to different classes, and we don't see some of our homeroom kids until the end of the day, because they're going from their math teacher to their ELE teacher and so on. So, I'm enjoying it, and the kids seem to. If we, they're asking for it right away. Like, what are we doing today? Or can we play that game that we played, yesterday? And they'll start asking. So by 5th grade, we actually try to eventually, where they're kind of leading it. So that's my goal, to eventually have them kind of leading it instead of me picking all the activities. They kind of can do it. So, yeah.
So one of the other components is the greeting, and by starting morning meeting off with the greeting, every student is greeted and every student hears his or her name. So that's important. And then after the greeting, we do a sharing, and children love to talk. They love to tell stories. And one of our colleagues in 5th grade last year, who has been working on the zones, she incorporated the zones in morning meeting. So I sort of spun off that, and I'm doing the same thing, but I make it optional. And what I find is that the students want to share their zones. So a lot of times we do a lightning share, which is something I learned years and years and years ago from my farmer in 1st grade. So they have like a minute to share, and then it goes on. So a lot of times they will share what zone they're in and why. And I make it optional. They don't have to share their zone, but they want to share their zone. And more often than not, they're in the green zone. It's first thing in the morning. They're pretty happy to be in school. They're usually excited to go off to specials a little bit later on. But there are times that they'll be in another zone, and it gives me an opportunity to talk to them about, what are some tools, what are some things we can do to help move you into the green. I'll go back to that in a second. So I wanted to say that I feel that by having morning meeting, I am building better connections with my students, and they're building better connections with me. Because I'm sharing, I'm not always in the green, as the girls before were saying. When my kid went off to college, I was in the blue zone, and we talked about that. And I've been in the red zone, and I've talked about that too. But how do we move past that? So I feel like they're seeing me on their level. We all have feelings. We can talk about things. So they're more comfortable with me, and that's definitely something the past couple of years, I think, by doing the zones, it's just brought a more family feeling to the classroom. And so if there is an issue where, somebody might be in the blue zone or the red zone, they are more apt to talk to me about it. And just last week, one of my students was in the red zone, and her head was down, and I'm not like her at all. So I let them, we finished up the meeting, and I pulled her aside, and I talked to her in private, and I said, oh, so you're in the red zone, what's up? Do you want to talk about it? Does it have something to do with school? And she said, yes, I'm very angry. And it was something that had happened the previous day in social studies, and she was upset with 2 kids in her group, and she felt like they weren't listening to her ideas. And I apologized. I said, I'm sorry, I didn't realize this was going on yesterday. Well, what do you think we can do? And she said she wanted to talk to the 2 gentlemen. And she did, and then they apologized. But then I said to her afterwards, I said, so how do you feel? And she said, I'm still in the red. I said, well, what do you think you can do to start moving away from the red? And she said, I'm going to look forward to playing with my friends at recess. And I said, all right, good idea. So I checked in with her after recess, and she was fine. But it was nice just to have a basic language that I could connect with this girl, and it was something as simple as morning meeting. And I brought this guy up just because, and you might have noticed it, and when the students are sharing, the person who shares, typically, this is how I run it, is they hold something, and they are the speaker, so nobody is allowed to talk over them or to interrupt. Whoever is holding whatever it might be is the person who's sharing, and then they pass it on to the next person. So it's just a way of being patient and waiting your turn. So
Which is hard.
it is,
hard.
even for me. Yeah, that's it. Any questions?
Was correct.
Mr. Murphy?
What's he going to say now?
I think Tom wants that red
We
thing.
can leave you this. Do you want that?
I'm just sitting here thinking back to Miss Cork's first grade classroom at Memorial School back in the early 60s, sitting 35 people in a row in chairs and a desk, and it's just amazing to see how things evolve over time. But it's, anything that gets the kids focused and gets the better rapport and better communication, I think is clearly a good thing. So
Exactly. Yeah.
Looks like a great tool.
Great.
Ms. Monaco?
It's just fascinating to see the techniques that you employ. They're so different from just sit in your rows and learn, whatever. The fact that you're gauging the emotional state of each child each day and drawing them out, it's great. Yeah, congratulations, keep it up. Love
Thank
it.
you.
Ms. Simon?
Yeah, I think it's wonderful that all of you are doing this, that so many teachers have really embraced these kinds of strategies, and that you're finding it helpful also. And I think for people who are not immersed in teaching these days, sometimes it's a little confusing. And, the goal is to improve student achievement, to help our students learn. And I think what we're hearing is that when students are in the green zone, or when they can address their different feelings and cope with their different feelings, then they can learn. And so it isn't disconnected, it's very connected. And I think it's not always obvious to people who aren't in the education field, but I think that these are good examples of how students can then be ready to go to a class where there might have been a kid that got them mad the day before, or they are ready to try hard in a class that's hard for them, or a subject that's hard for them. And I do think that it's really important on its own to help kids with their social emotional learning, but it also helps student learning, and it helps improve student achievement. I think it's great that so many of our teachers are doing it, that we're doing system-wide initiatives for this. I worry sometimes that we have so many initiatives and they're usually all good, but I'm so glad to see that this is playing out and being learned and being embraced in so many different ways. So.
Yes.
Mr. Nelson?
Just a quick comment. I think it just goes to show the expanded role of teachers now in our classrooms, and how they're not just teaching content. They're behavior modification, and it's intervention, and all of these other things that help kids to learn the content. And I just applaud the staff for expanding all of their skills and becoming more than just teachers, And it's just a wonderful program. So keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
I actually have a question, because when this is brought up to people either outside Burlington or other teachers, their comment is, I don't have time for this. And I have my own opinions about that, but I'd like to hear from you who've implemented. You said 25 minutes, that's a long time. What would you say to those teachers or those parents that are saying that you can't put that in there, that's too much time away from math or something
Well,
else?
it's still learning, because from now to the rest of their lives, they have to learn to deal with other people, to work in groups, to learn those coping skills, by doing the activities we do, even the greeting. They're talking to people that they wouldn't normally talk to. I think we're teaching, social skills and life skills.
Yeah. And those 25 minutes, I kind of, I remember going into the class this summer and thinking, how am I going to fill 25 minutes every single day for 180, I'm 80 days. I thought that myself. And it's been really easy, surprisingly. And the time really, it's more that it goes by so fast that I have always more than I want to do, that I can, or they want to keep playing, or the activity we're doing, they want to do it again. That's why we tend to repeat it. But I think those 25 minutes are well spent, because in the end, you've prepared them for the day.
Right.
You've started off on a really good foot, and even if they didn't walk in on a good foot, hopefully you've helped some of them turn that around, and hopefully make it more of a productive day for everyone moving forward for the rest of the day, which saves time on that end.
Exactly.
Less interruptions maybe.
Exactly.
Whereas if we didn't have it, then you have interruptions during math class that you have to kind of stop and have to, address. And I think maybe there's less of that now, or there should be less of that, because you're kind of addressing it in the morning.
Right.
And kind of getting everybody on a good foot. That's my
Excellent.
take.
I really like the different examples that you showed, using the decimals, you're kind of combining it, and you're right, you bring more focused learning time by doing this. The math is more focused, they're able to really delve into it, work with partners, everything now, right through the grades as you go through. So I appreciate all the time and energy, on behalf as a parent too, that you've put into this program and really brought to our students. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I heard the commissioner speak recently, and he said, in this accountability system that we have, that he thinks we've lost sight of relationships. And I just want to be clear that we haven't lost sight of relationships in Burlington. It's the starting point to connect with kids. If you don't have a relationship with the students, or they don't know that you care about them, then you're not going to get where you want to go. So again, it's a credit to the work of the teachers, as usual, to make this a priority and show up in the summer for these trainings. And again, the zones of regulation and those types of things, and we'll hear about mindfulness in a minute as well. And it's, again, we're focused on the whole child, and if the kid doesn't think the adults care about them, you're not going to get to step one where you want to go. So.
And again, Sid, you attended the responsive classroom training again in our own time during the summer. So again, this idea that teachers are sort of, off all the time, I think is a bit of a misnomer. And so that training takes place. We've offered it, I think, for 3 or 4 subsequent summers. We try to do 30 spots at a time. And we're sort of working our way through towards the district objective. And again, the responsive classroom would be our way to go. And I'll have some wrap-up comments as well, but I think you're obviously supporting these efforts by supporting the training. And I think another big factor, and I'll drag Nicole up at the end too, are class sizes. I think sometimes that's something that this committee has really stuck to, and I think the teachers would say, boy, it's easier to form those relationships when you're not doing it to 24, 27 kids, and I think that's just critically important. And then Mrs. Russo, what I would say to any skeptic is what they're starting to see is there's a higher correlation to social-emotional growth and ultimately to achievement, college survivability, than just to straight content knowledge. So I think the skills that they're teaching now are, again, more highly correlated ultimately to achievement and to sort of how you want to define success, but to future choices than just that kids can fill in a content test and do that well. So I think that's part of the reason the commissioner is starting to push back a little bit on that, because that's becoming more and more clear. So awesome job. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, come on up, Ms. Farmer. So Ms. Farmer is going to talk about mindfulness to you. This is the third practice that teachers are using, and she knows so much more about it than I do. But we've started Tuesday mornings, actually, staff. She's coming in early, invited staff to join her for a minute of mindfulness, a few minutes to kind of look in ourselves and get ready for the day. So I'll turn it right over to her to talk more about this.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hi.
Welcome.
Well, my colleagues and I have noticed over the years, we've been teaching a long time, and anxiety in children is just going up, 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 up. So I figured we needed to up our game in how we're dealing with anxiety, because we all know an anxious child can't learn and an anxious child can't be happy. And what teachers want most is for children to be happy and to learn. So we decided to bring in some mindfulness practice. So I started it in my classroom probably about 3-4 years ago, and I got trained in it. And other teachers are now receiving training in it as well. And it's really a teacher up movement. We're just like doing it on our own at this point. We had some help from Patrick, who gave some training to teachers, about 20 teachers over the summer, where they could go online and do some training on mindfulness as well. It's basically doing mindfulness for yourself first and then teaching it to the children. So that is why mindfulness is now beginning in Francis Wyman. We have a lot of people starting to do it in Francis Wyman. And I believe it's starting to spill over into other schools as well, and even a little into the middle and high school. But I always like to start the presentation on mindfulness by asking this question. Have you ever said to a child or teen, you need to calm down, time to focus, you need to pay attention? You don't have to answer that, but I know I have. But the bigger question is, do they know how? So mindfulness teaches them this explicitly. And it teaches it to them in a way before they are in a state of upset. Because once a child is in a state of upset, you can't say, okay, let's do some breathing. They're not going to listen. They're not going to listen to you. They cannot learn when they're in a state of upset. So we teach mindfulness lessons. we use the responsive classroom, still do the meeting and the activities. Maybe one day a week, I'll do a mindfulness lesson. It'll be about 15 minutes long. And then that mindfulness lesson, we can revisit throughout the week, throughout the year, throughout the month. And then we'll just return to using some mindfulness techniques throughout the day as well. So most of the lessons just focus on your senses. So we use mindful listening, we'll ring a bell, children close their eyes and just listen for the bell. When it's over, they'll raise their hand, or we'll just close your eyes for a minute, listen to all the sounds in a room, and it gets the children to come back into the present. Because if you're anxious, you're thinking about the future, or you're thinking about something that happened yesterday in social studies, right? So get them back to the future, get them back to the present. Mindful breathing is the big thing that we do every day. We do a mindful minute every day, and I'll explain that later. Mindful seeing or watching, just look around. Did you know something about this room that you've never noticed before? Or can you find 5 things that are orange in this room? Or when we're walking down to gym, can you notice what's on the walls? You know, things that they don't always pay attention to. Mindful smelling, that speaks for itself. Mindful eating, I can do this before snack time. Sometimes I have a little lunch bunch with the children, and we'll look at the food, we'll take a bite, we'll just chew that one bite over and over and over, feel the textures, feel the taste, so they're not gobbling down their food, and we're teaching everybody to slow down. Basically, mindfulness is just teaching everyone to take a pause, slow down, because they're moving from one classroom to the other, to the other, to another, and we're just giving that moment just to pause. And mindful movement, some yoga and other simple movements that are incorporated into the responsive classroom and into the morning meeting. It also includes heartfulness. It has a lot of lessons that deal with compassion and self-compassion. So starting with self-compassion, which leads to empathy, which leads to compassion. So you can't just have just all the sitting and breathing. You have to have the softer part of the heartfulness as well. So what happens every day in my classroom and in a lot of classrooms during morning meeting is the mindful minute. And that's the practice of learning how to focus on your breath. So when a child is in upset, maybe later on, we can send them over to the take a break chair and say, why don't you do a little mindful breathing? And they'll know exactly what to do. So because they've already been taught when they're in a calm state. So this is just a video of my classroom from last year doing the mindful minute. And as the year goes on, the children start to lead it. So it's a first grade classroom.
Okay, show me your mindful honey. And then your favorite anchor spot.
The anchor spot so they can feel their breath.
So you're feeling your bottom on the floor and that little balloon pulling you up to keep you nice and calm. Breathing in. Breathing out. Your eyes are open. I invite you to close them. The bottoms are off the floor. I invite you to put your bottoms back down to the floor. Go grab that butterfly and bring it back. You forgot about your mindful body. Go back into your mindful body.
So as you notice, they're not always all doing it, but that doesn't mean they're not getting it. I had a child that just scowled the entire year when we did Mindful Minute, and I didn't think he got anything out of it. But I heard from his parents 3 years later that he's still doing it at home. So you don't always see the results, but hopefully we're teaching them a life skill that they can use. I wish I learned this when I was their age, learning how to just stop and think, again, the zones, think of how you're feeling, and then how we can shift out of that feeling, and learning how to pay attention. So every time their mind starts to wander, they would take that butterfly brain, that's what that movement was, and bring it back to their breath. So every time they noticed they weren't thinking about their breath, they brought it back. Again, it's not a silver bullet. It's not something that's a cure-all, that's going to cure everything. It's just another strategy, another tool to use in zones, a tool to use in responsive classroom, and a tool to use throughout the day. You can do 3 mindful breaths before you line up to go to another classroom. And you can do a mindful minute when you're coming back in from reading, just to arrive in the classroom. So basically, we're hoping that it's in some classrooms, and teachers are starting to learn about it. So the hope is that more teachers will want to learn about it and teach it to their children, their students.
How was Tranquil Tuesday? How's the turnout? So you want to tell people about that? What's happening on Tuesdays?
Tranquil Tuesday is every Tuesday morning the staff gets together before school, and we do about 10 to 15 minutes of just some mindfulness, some mindful meditation.
And I
So.
greatly appreciate it.
So we named it Tranquil Tuesdays. So any questions about it? I know it's a lot to describe in a little short amount of time, but if you have any questions.
That's definitely something that she could.
Could she go Tranquil
She could definitely
Tuesdays?
get used to that. No, again, like everything else, it's education in 2018, and it's just, to me, it's fascinating to watch. It touches on things that 25 years ago people weren't even thinking about, and it's clearly working. So keep it up. That's great. I'm very impressed.
Ms. Monko?
If you push the button on my Fitbit a few times, it tells you to breathe.
Oh, it's
And
a reminder.
it gives you a whole 2 minutes of breathing and relaxing and doing all that
Right.
wonderful mindful stuff.
Right.
So,
It's something that we need as adults, for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Especially if we're teaching children, because the children attune to us.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to keep ourselves in a calm state, in a green state, right? So.
good job.
I just want to thank you for bringing this to our kids and bringing this to the staff and all the staff who are taking on these additional things, because I think they're so valuable for the students and for the teachers as well. So I'm glad that there's ways that teachers can rejuvenate themselves as well. Tranquil Tuesday sounds great. So, thank you all. Yeah.
Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, it's nice to learn a little bit about it, because I've heard so much about mindfulness, and I'm saying, well, what is mindfulness?
It's
You
a
know,
big
what is it
buzzword
all
now,
about?
yes.
You know, everyone's talking about it now and taking different classes in mindfulness, and you did a nice job explaining it and how you use it in your classroom. And, we meet every other Tuesday, so maybe I don't know if you would call our meetings tranquil. I think Eric would probably say they're not all tranquil, but it'd be nice if we could implement some of those strategies for
Well,
our
when
meetings.
Nicola started a staff meeting or two with a mindful minute for all the staff to
Yeah.
do, so.
Nice idea. Thank you.
Well, and before Dr. Conti speaks, I just want to say thank you again to everyone. But what I really liked about the video when you were doing the mindfulness activity, you could hear all the background noise. There was a phone ringing, there were other children in classrooms, and that's real world.
Right.
And teaching them in a real world environment where there's all that background noise is exactly what you need to do at work and what you need to do when you get in the car before you start driving. And, it's nice to see them in an environment where it's not still and silent, so they get used to, how do I do this with still all the stimulus around me. So I thought that was a great part of the video too, so thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.
Could I say something first?
Yeah, please.
Sorry.
Oh, no, you
Oh,
can,
are you done?
you can, just want to, thank you as, yeah. But the mindfulness as we talked about, like, kids are coming in with a lot more anxiety and different concerns, and the teachers are the ones that have to deal with the kids, obviously, and help them cope. So it's important that we are giving these opportunities for staff to practice mindfulness. And Irene will start yoga again this Thursday, which I don't know how many years it's been, but again, a free opportunity weekly for people to, again, adults to practice mindfulness. And we've worked having some conversations with Patrick Barbieri, who's here, the director of lab. His whole staff is trained in mindfulness. He has what's called the Mind and Body team. So we'll have a few folks from our district capacity project. The social emotional learning subgroup is going to attend his Mind and Body team meeting October 15th at the end of the school day. And then we're going to send 2 folks to the lab retreat. They have a Mind and Body retreat on October 25th that we're going to send 2 folks to. So if we're going to do this with kids, I mean, I think it's great. The staff at Francis Wyman talked about how they model the zones, and if we're going to model mindfulness for staff, we need to do it ourselves if we're going to model it. And so I know Eric and I are talking about for our administrative council meetings, so that's coming as well. We think it's really important. I know parents in the community, I think, have been concerned at times about the amount of technology in front of kids, especially when we went to one-to-one with iPads. And I just want you to know and them to know that we really are trying to have meaningful conversations about balance and making sure we're modeling that as an adult. And then, you know, the kids, it's an important skill nowadays. I know some of you have young kids at home, some of you have grandkids at home, and to see how connected they are to those screens sometimes. If we don't start this, I think, in school right now, teach them that balance, I think it's going to be a struggle for them down the road. So, again, thanks again for sharing all the things you're doing at Francis Wyman.
Ms. McDonald, come on up. Come on up. First of all, thank you very much. Again, just great to have a glimpse of classrooms, which is really why we do the things that we do. You brought a great team, but I know you could have brought, 9 others, and it would have been just as great. So thank you all for coming out and sharing and representing your school so well. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, ladies.
Again, social emotional learning is part of our planning for success, and how we're teaching that and doing that explicitly, I think, is important. I did want to revisit, because I do think in listening to teachers, sometimes I do think our efforts to keep class sizes low at the elementary level is critical for developing those relationships and working. You're going to see nods in the back of the room, absolutely. So Francis Wyman specifically, again, Nicole, something we're going to have to consider with the committee is we have a bulging class in grade 2. So Francis Wyman is a 6-section school. A 5-section school, as you know, but we have a 6th. We had a 6th K 2 years ago. We had a 6th first. Now we have a 6th second, and the decision we're going to have to make this budget season is, do we keep that 6th section for 3rd, 4th, and 5th, or do we, merge it in and have larger class sizes? But all I'm saying is the relationship work, the social emotional work is, I think, directly connected to the opportunities and the resources that are provided here. Francis Wyman, Mr. D, is, again, assistant principal that was added 3-4 years ago. And again, so thank you for coming, and outstanding. Francis Wyman is also the school that has a lot of the district programming that we do. So I think the culture at Francis Wyman has always been one of inclusion, which is, again, is also a strategic objective of the district, is to enhance inclusion. And we don't really need to do that at Francis Wyman, because I think that culture has been around for quite a long time, for those of you who've been there. And I think that the strategies that we're teaching some of our neediest children can be applied to all children. And I guess what I'm learning is, when we do that without sort of making a big deal that we're teaching it to all kids, isn't that what universal design is? At some point, Diana's going to tell me yes. So good strategies apply to everybody at all times. And I think what you're seeing at Francis Wyman is a lot of those practices that are, again, that are good for kids. Mindfulness isn't just for the special kids or just for the kids who have trouble. It's for everybody, as are the zones, as is responsive classroom. So I think that's important. I think this is the part of the presentation where, again, Mr. Nelson's going to ask a really important question of you. And again, besides gratitude, I think his question is always going to be what, Mr. Nelson?
What can we do to further support your efforts?
And we all love that question, so. Again, I just want to thank my team for sharing their time and their talents. As Dr. Conti said, the entire team at Francis Wyman is talented. They weren't all willing to share tonight at 7 o'clock, so they get extra points for that. But they are talented and they're modest, actually. I just wanted to highlight, thank you for all the compliments and the feedback. But, what they're doing is even better than what they can portray in a 2-minute video and what you see on the screen. 31 classrooms doing morning meeting every single day. The community building, the relationship building, the connections that we have with our students and our families, they just can't clearly communicate their dedication to that. And I'm truly grateful for their time, for their commitment, for their efforts. So Mr. Nelson, in answer to your question, just more of or as much as you've been willing to provide in terms of training, support, low classroom size, I really think it has paid off for all of us at Francis Wyman. And I think our teachers' talents continue to grow each year, their commitment to the kids, their commitment to each other, the collaboration that goes on, cross special ed, ELL, regular ed classrooms, doors are open, people are willing to share their investment in students. So having the opportunity and the support staff, the social worker, the ELL teachers, our special ed team, all of those people contribute. And, I can't say enough for Daryl as well and his support of all of us and kind of sharing the size of the school, the programs that we have there. So his talent is greatly appreciated as well. So I guess the short answer to your question is the resources are greatly appreciated.
Thank you.
Keep us in the green zone if you can.
We'll see you back in February and March when we're talking about our budgets.
Absolutely.
We'll try to move
have
into that zone.
conversation, right?
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's greatly appreciated, everyone.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. Is there a second floor?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't think, there was a second floor above us right here.
Oh, yeah, there is.
Okay. Never gone up there then. All right. No, thank you again. So next you want to take 8C and bring that up?
I did, because,
No?
if that's okay, Madam Chair, just because I
Perfect.
think it's kind of connected, and I think Ms. Coleman has been patient, and again, I think Diana will be here, and I'm sorry, if your entire group come up, that would be great, and
It's up to you.
you're all, Jill, you're more than welcome, thank you all. Yeah. I haven't, so please.
Grab a chair. This is staircase. If you go out in the hall there, this is staircase.
Not that I want to be the center of everything, but
I don't know, they change it around.
Well, welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight.
were you going to start? Did you have something you wanted to, you were going to start, right?
I can, so.
You don't have to, that was what I
No,
thought the game plan was here.
I will. So this is going to be a resource conversation, and this is a conversation that impacts Burlington, but it's a larger conversation than just Burlington that we're going to be having over the next few months. So as you all know, the three revenue sources that the district has to operate are federal, state, and local. Burlington by far is funded mostly through local revenue, but we do get a significant portion of revenue from the state, and that's called Chapter 70 money. And the Chapter 70 formula was designed as a part of ed reform when they significantly increased state funding in '93, or about 25 years ago. They created a formula that was, I think, designed to provide some, or to enhance the level of equity across different communities, because all different communities have different abilities to pay. They all receive different percentages of state funding, different percentages of federal dollars, and different percentages of local dollars. that funding formula really hasn't been adjusted in 25 years, and in terms of the state funding, and that's causing some financial challenges and has caused, I think, some growing inequity across school districts. I believe the state is aware of the issue. The legislature and the House and the Senate are, I think, trying to work on a solution. And I just think there are many of us who are involved in education are encouraging them to do so. So I think the Superintendent's Association is taking a position that the formula needs to be sort of updated after 25 years. And I believe the Massachusetts Teachers Association is taking that same position. And I wanted to give them an opportunity to present their position tonight. And I do want this committee to understand, I think it's going to be school committees that need to really also join into this conversation if this funding formula is going to be updated and adjusted for the costs of 2018 and beyond. So with that, I will turn it over to Madam Chair, with your permission, to Diana. And Diana, if you would, again, I know Jill,
Sure.
I'm sorry we haven't met, but please introduce your team.
All right, I am pleased to be here tonight with two of my colleagues from the Massachusetts Teachers Association, Jill Coleman, who has been our rep for a number of years. I won't say how many. Yeah, she's back. She's back. And also Jean Vanette, who is working to organize with our members for a number of different things, including the push to have additional school funding through both the state and the local process. As the superintendent mentioned, in 2015, there was the Nonpartisan Foundation Budget Review Commission. And what they discovered was that because of the outdated formula, that Massachusetts schools were being underfunded by the state by over $1 billion. And the matter went before the legislature over the past year, and unfortunately, they ended the session without coming to a compromise or a plan to move forward. If the 4 core recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission were phased in, it would mean greater funding especially for our neediest communities. The whole idea here is to have equity. We have an advantage. We are able to rely upon some local funding. But there are many districts that can't. So just to give you an idea, for Brockton, this means $46.5 million per year, every year, to help support their schools. Fall River, $33 million, Lawrence, $49, where I live in Lowell, $42.4 million. Struggling communities like New Bedford, over $40 million. Unlike Burlington, they don't have the ability to make up the difference between what their students need and what they get from the state. Now, as Dr. Conti mentioned, we do have that ability. So, but we also can benefit from the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission. So I brought you some checks tonight, if I can come and give them to you.
They're really big. I really wanted the Publishers Clearinghouse size, but I brought you each one.
Are these negotiable?
Yeah, right. Yeah, sure. There will be an ask.
As you can see, that check, which sadly is not negotiable, is for $1,023,681. According to the Massachusetts Budget and Policy Center, if the Foundation Budget Review Commission's recommendations were phased in, that's how much more we would be getting for each year going forward. So I have to ask you this because I'm pretty sure you have a lot of answers. What do you think we could do with another $1 million a year? Just from sitting in this room with you. How many times have I heard that we're worried about the fact that we may not have a boiler in this building and heating system because we keep having to replace parts of it? So we could update or maintain our heating and cooling systems so that we aren't constantly wondering when it's going to die. And We wouldn't have to spend, our students wouldn't have to spend the first few weeks of every year and the last few weeks of every year in rooms that reach 90 degrees or more. We could renovate our chemistry classrooms so that they no longer look like the one that I had chemistry class in 1981. We could provide professional development for programs like the ones that you saw tonight, Responsive Classroom, so that everyone would have an opportunity to learn that. Mindfulness classes, trauma-sensitive education, universal design for learning, cultural competency, social-emotional learning, the ever-changing curriculum frameworks that for whatever reason, just as soon as you've completely got them down, they change. Not just what you teach, but how you teach. You saw Frances Wyman here tonight. Frances Wyman has an assistant principal. We need another 2 or 3 assistant principals in order to do the best we can for our students, to have those folks there that need to help, to arrange for programs, to support our students. We would be able to do more to keep our class sizes down. We could add nurses so that we can make sure that we have safe environments for our students who are coming to school with an increasing number of health issues. We could provide more opportunities for students to engage in more art, music, drama, field trips, experiential learning. Those are just the things that I reeled off, scribbling down in a few minutes. I'm willing to bet that you have far more that you could add to that list. Every one of them to improve student achievement. So I come tonight with an ask. And my ask is that you pass a resolution calling upon the state legislature to go back to the table and to pass the recommendations of the Foundation Budget Review Commission, and to do so soon. In fact, you'll see in the resolution that we're asking for it to be done prior to May 1st of 2019. And you should have a copy of it in your packet, and I ask you to review it, and I would greatly appreciate it if you had any questions to ask them, but also that you vote on it tonight.
Mr. Nelson?
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that the committee adopt the resolution as submitted in our backup materials.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Questions, comments?
Again, Madam Chair, I just wanted to frame this a little bit. Most of our conversations at this committee are expense side conversations. This is actually a revenue side conversation. And there are many communities in Massachusetts, when we talk about the term, we say foundation budget. Again, in 1993, the state established a level of funding that they believe provided an adequate education for all students. And again, that foundation really hasn't been adjusted for those 25 years. So you can imagine how your lives have changed in terms of revenue and expenses in the last 25 years. So districts have had to do more with less. We're very, again, fortunate in Burlington in that our community spends well over the foundation budget. So this isn't necessarily a conversation directed locally, because I think locally our taxpayers have done that, because as you all have said, a budget is really a value statement. And what we're asking the state budgeters to do is to make a stronger value statement in terms of equity and a stronger statement in terms of public education. And so, again, this idea that Burlington would get potentially get an additional $1 million in state revenue for us to use is not saying that our schools are underfunded here in Burlington. It would just be the state saying that we really need to value public education more, and the impact that it's having on communities that only fund their schools at a foundation level established 25 years ago, and there are some of those communities, or in some of the gateway or urban settings where our schools are drastically underfunded. They've really had to cut back on services. So the Brockton example, and I work a lot with Kathy Smith, who's the superintendent there, they are looking at class sizes of over 30. And so you can imagine some of the programming that you mentioned here today, or trying to do a morning meeting with 30 first graders as opposed to 18 or 19. It's just a significant difference. And again, it's that growing inequity. And my point is, while that may not be an immediate Burlington problem, if those children aren't being educated, if they're not sort of graduating and college or career ready, if they're not sort of being productive citizens later in life, then it's going to be costing everybody more money to provide those services that they're going to need afterwards. So I just think it's an imperative that the state continue the journey that they started. I think we've made, again, good progress. I think the part of the objective, again, regardless of whether you like all the testing or everything else, but I think the objective in 93 was to sort of improve equity. And I really think they need to take that stand again, which is why we're really trying to work together across all communities. So it's not just Brockton or the Brockton School Committee that's asking for the state to step up. It really needs to be communities like Burlington that are funding well over foundation, because what we're saying is our children need it. And I think that it's important that you say, in solidarity with the Brockton School Committee, that Brockton children need it, and Chelsea children need it, and Fitchburg children need it, as well as Burlington and everyone else. And so that's what I would say. But this is sort of a revenue side conversation, and it's really, it does not mean that we are not grateful for the local funding that we receive over foundation budget here in Burlington. And I just want to stress that.
Mr. Murphy.
Thank you. This is something that's long overdue, in my opinion, and I remember looking at those lists in the past, and whenever it was established in 1993, there doesn't seem to be a lot of logic that went into the whatever equation that they put in place. And I think that's one of the inherent problems of getting a change now, frankly. There are a lot of towns and cities out there who have a vested interest in leaving things the way that they are, because not only doesn't it increase revenues to some cities and towns, but also it might decrease some to others. And that's a hurdle, I think, that needs to get climbed over in order to get this passed. But hopefully enough people will sit back and look at this from an equity standpoint and realize that there are certain cities and towns on that list receiving a lot more funds, and in my opinion, they shouldn't be above some other cities and towns if you look at it demographically. So I applaud the effort. This is long overdue. In trying to get people in the legislature to vote against their own specific interests is a difficult thing to do. So keep punching.
Yep, I will say I do know that, there are some concerns about some of the calculations within it, especially regarding socioeconomically disadvantaged students. Those are things that we also want to have worked out. No one should be undercounting the number of high-need students that they have. But all in all, we're looking to have this updated so that when we say that all students get an excellent education in Massachusetts, we really do mean all.
I agree.
Mrs. Monco?
I think this would have a large impact on the state budget, which is probably one of the reasons that nothing has happened so far. I agree that it's long overdue, and what can we do except, ask? It also seems to me like this is something that really, if it's part of the state budgeting process, it should really be recalculated every year, or, pretty close to that, because it changes all the time. So if you're really looking for equity, you need to do more than look at it once every 25 years.
Yeah.
But clearly, just look at real estate values and where people buy houses, and obviously the educational differences are vast. And Massachusetts has a wonderful reputation, but even within the state, it's, there are drastic differences. So I applaud your efforts. We'll certainly support this. I hope that those who sit on Beacon Hill can find a way to come up with the funding to really make education far more equitable across the state. Thanks for bringing it to us.
Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, when I read the resolution, I was happy to support this, obviously. I've always been troubled by the formulas. I mean, they're archaic. Who can figure them out? I mean, you have to have a degree in economics, and even that would take you probably a semester to figure it out. And every year you see more and more state mandates, and they never fund any of them, and then people say, well, Burlington's a big wealthy community. They're not that wealthy. We have a good commercial tax base, but there are a lot of people in town that are middle-class folks, and they'd like to see a little more money coming to Burlington. We spend a lot of money on education because we value it. But with all the mandates that are imposed on us every year, it would be nice if we had some equity. And Diana, when you showed us this check, I'd be shocked if we ever saw anything like that, because there seems to be a disconnect between what's equitable for people who live in Burlington, and particularly the middle-class citizens, and some of the needs in other communities. I mean, some communities, they don't support education like we do. They don't want to raise their taxes every year. And Burlington's willing to do it, to keep up with inflation, which is basically what we're trying to do, and to keep up with the state mandates. So, I hope they come up with a more equitable formula for everybody. And I know that the school districts, like you said, Brockton and Lawrence and Lowell, they're struggling, and they can't raise the taxes. They won't be able to collect the money. But I hope they come up with something better. I mean, we got a lot of casino money coming in pretty soon, hopefully, and maybe we can earmark some of those revenues and get a better and more equitable distribution to help all of the communities in this state, because we can say the kids are coming to school now with more and more challenges, and they need more and more services. And it's always the property tax dollar that's expected to fund those things. It would be nice if the state stepped in, and they're mandating these things. They ought to help us pay for them. So thank you for bringing it forward.
Ms. Simon?
Yeah, I want to thank you for bringing it to us. I completely support this resolution in an attempt to create more equity in Massachusetts and to provide the kind of funding that we all want for all of our students. In order to preserve our democracy, we need to educate all students well. We can't just say, oh, well, we can let that town go and this city go. It's not just a question of, yes, we want to support, our goal, our focus is Burlington students, but Burlington students won't be able to be as successful in the future if the people around them don't have the kind of education that they need. And there are also, as Dr. Conti mentioned, costs that come up later if we don't fund education well, if we don't provide the kind of resources and services and education that students need all across the Commonwealth. Then we're going to end up paying for it in other ways in the future, in lost lives. So I definitely support this. I believe that a year or two ago that the Massachusetts Association of School Committees had a resolution similar to this. This was before this year, when the state legislature actually had some real conversations about it. I was very disappointed that they didn't pass it this year, but I very much support pressuring the legislature to really get it done and take care of this, because students, lives keep going and they can't wait. So thank you for bringing this to us.
Thank you.
I too would like to thank you and just piggyback on a number of comments. So the mandates, we keep seeing them every year. We're fortunate here that we're able to absorb a lot of them, but it adds another stress to our budgeting. When this came out, Chapter 70, there were errors. I spent about 3 years at the State House in another community, and they agreed, yes, your property value was calculated wrong, but we're not going to do anything because we don't want to take anything away from another community's already foundation budget and what they're receiving. So they tried pothole grants and different ways to try, and it didn't make up. It was not the same. So when you're looking at your property values are being calculated higher than a Winchester, and they're saying, yes, you're right, but we can't do anything. It's very frustrating. You think about that compounded over the past 20 years. Okay, it just puts so many districts behind the 8 ball and struggle. And as Dr. Conti and others have said, those students do not get what they need at the equity of other students. And that's the bottom line. They're all our children, whether they're a Burlington child, a Woburn child, a Brockton child. They're all our children. And Ms. Simon gave us a bookmark, I think years ago now, Frederick Douglass. It's better, I have it up in my classroom. It's better to build strong children than fix broken men. We see a huge crisis right now in our mental health industry, and you know, this is the time to invest the money, to invest our children, and really give them that foundation for them to be productive citizens, no matter what avenue they choose to go into after schooling. So I want to thank you for bringing this forward. If you need anything State House level, I'll make the rounds again. I'll testify.
I'll be holding you to that.
Whatever.
Bring the rest with you.
You know, it's very important that they hear it loud and clear, and as you said, that they hear from all the communities and know that we stand together. So thank you.
Thank you.
Gotta take a vote.
Oh, sorry. So there's, it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, 500. And that is the vote to, for the Massachusetts Foundation Budget Formula Resolution.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jill, is this conversation going to be expanding? I'm assuming your local presidents are going to be taking this to their, to all of their communities and moving forward, and then you all will then be compiling the resolutions and letting us know sort of who's on board and who's not?
Absolutely. To give you updates. I mean, a lot of communities in the west have already, and Springfield has, Pittsfield, you know, started west. And Pittsfield and Springfield passed a couple weeks ago. I know there's been several others, and there's some communities right around here, sort of more our contiguous communities that are starting to get it on their agendas. So we should have updates for you.
Great.
But the plan is it's been rolled out, and to get into, hopefully, no school committee has declined yet. It's just getting on agendas and doing it.
Okay. So thank you for doing so.
Yeah. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all so much. It's great to see everybody.
Yep.
Same here, Jill.
Welcome back, Jill.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks. Oh,
Can
yes,
I
Mrs.
make a
Marco?
comment, Dr. Conti, and Mr. Cuna? I am currently approaching the red zone because there are teeny weeny little flies in here, and they're driving me nuts.
Me too.
So
Fruit flies.
can we manage to eradicate them before the next meeting? Thank you.
They're like a banana.
Do you know how to get rid of them?
Someone put under their seat.
Yeah. Not my job.
I know how to get rid of them.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So to that end, we will try to accelerate and get through the rest of the agenda, but I'd certainly appreciate your support of the resolution that was before you. I think we'll be having more conversations about that as I am having some of these conversations myself through the Superintendent's Association. And the legislature is working hard. This is a priority. I think the argument as to whether the formula needs to change is one. I just think they're honestly trying to figure out how to change it and how to afford it. And Mr. Nelson, there are going to be some new revenue sources coming into the state, and I think there's many groups that are vying for those revenues. But we obviously believe education should be the priority. I think transportation should be a priority. So I think that's going to be. I think people need to make sure their voices are heard. So, Madam Chair, if we could just go back to the number 5, the 2018 MCAS overview. Again, Patrick put just a brief, some brief presentation together for you. Something he's going to stress, again, that I'm going to stress, that we sort of keep talking. We have a new commissioner. The new commissioner seems to be swinging the pendulum back a little bit from testing. But please remember, this is we use the term MCAS, but this is really MCAS 2.0. So this is a completely different set of assessments and standards than have been in place the last 20 years. So they're changing the assessments. They also have to change the funding, but again, they're getting there. So this is what it is, and I think doing comparisons to the past are going to be extremely difficult or just nonsensical. So with that, Patrick.
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about this last time, and I just wanted to highlight a few things from this year. I mean, there's a lot of different accountability measures in the new accountability system, so I wasn't going to go through every one of those tonight, if that's okay. I will mention upfront just background again. So Next Generation MCAS are the ones that we took online, and the legacy MCAS would be the pen and paper, pencil and paper that the high school's taken traditionally, and again, there'd be no more legacy MCAS. At this point, high school will be on to computer this year as well, in the spring of 2019. But just again, to revisit, and a lot of this was in a blog post I made the day after or the day of the results going public. So I know we had a lot of conversations and concerns last year about the writing scores at the elementary level. So I just wanted again to reiterate to you and the folks that followed this last year that we saw a big jump in the elementary grades. In fact, there's two designations of schools as far as Burlington would go in regards to MCAS results. There's non-high schools, which is all the students in grades 3 through 8, and then there's high school. That would be the other, which would be Burlington High. And we did meet our targets in both math and ELA in our non-high school categories, so grades 3 through 8. I just want to put this caveat about a target. So they've told us not to compare past results, and I'm not saying that this is just as a fact. I'm not trying to be cute or sarcastic in any of this. I just want to be clear in my explanation in case it comes across that way. But they said don't compare, but again, the 2017 scores were used as our benchmark to set the targets for 2018. At the same time, these targets that we were shooting for when we took the spring testing were unknown to us. As they set this up, it was kind of flying the plane while they were building it. Again, that's just the fact of the new accountability system. I'm not criticizing, I'm just telling you where we're at this point. So let me just highlight the fourth grade scores. They made the biggest jump. Last year, our fourth graders were 13 percentage points below the state average in ELA, and again, that was largely because of the writing results. And this year, our ELA scores were three percentage points above the state average for elementary schools. So you can see last year, here's last year's result. We scored a 49% out of a possible 65% points. We were 13 below the state average when it came to the writing anchor standard. And this past year, again, here's the change. We were 2 points above the state average. So again, I think a lot of the work we did, which a lot of that didn't start till, I would say, December, when we really put the full court press on some of the issues we thought were related to the technology. If you recall, we bought keyboards for the kids. We asked to make sure that all the ELA classes were spending a certain amount of time a week on a keyboarding program, just to make sure the kids were comfortable with that, and just comfortable using the technology, because we found out, again, as we alluded to, the teachers were using a lot of Chromebooks for writing the previous year because they thought it was easier because they had keyboards. So we just made sure that any writing that was done in class from that point forward was done with the iPad, so it wouldn't be a second nature tool for the students when it came to writing, when it came to MCAS ELA. For our MCAS Next Generation Math, for elementary schools, we showed a little bit of a slight tick in the scores. They went up a little bit, in the top two categories going from 54% to 58%, and the biggest increase last year was at Memorial, sorry about that, where the percentage of students in exceeding expectations increased from 47% to 58%. So I highlighted, again, this is the Memorial graph. You'll see the top two categories here. And we made a huge jump last year in the math grades. That would be, when it says grades 3 through 8 at Memorial on the top of this sheet, obviously we only go 3 to 5, so that's what it's measuring here. Again, we saw the same type of increases at the middle school as it was year 2 of Next Generation MCAS. In both ELA and math, our MSMS ELA scores showed an increase from 39% of students scoring in the top two categories in 2017 to 47% last year in 2018. So you can see, again, the top two categories would be these two to the far left. And in the top two categories there, you see the increase last year. For math scores, we saw the percentage of students scoring in the top two tiers go from 49 to 57%. So again, just a quick look at the graph. You can see again the two far left here, 2017, and here are the 2018 scores. And typical, we've had these conversations at the high school, again, the last year of the legacy test, so we won't really have anything to compare moving forward. But our averages pretty much stayed the same as they have been historically in Burlington for ELA and math on the legacy MCAS. As you can see, they have the scores 15, 16, 17, and 18. And you don't see a dramatic change in the top two tiers. You can see from 17 to 18 that we jumped up in advanced, which means the proficient dips a little bit. So again, we look at those top two categories. And you'll see similar numbers going across. Again, for needs improvement, it's typically between 2 and 5% here in Burlington, and we had nobody warning or failing. And here's the math scores, again, very similar to what they had been previously. We had a couple years down the road, as you can see, where the advanced were a little bit higher. The last 2 years were similar, and with a little bit of a dip. And that's going to happen from one class to the next. But again, you're seeing pretty similar results with the legacy MCAS at the high school level to what we've seen historically at Burlington High School. So again, I shared this from Bob Lee, we worked with a lot here in Burlington when we did the park testing and some of the online testing. Bob came out to the district, and he's pretty highly regarded across the state, across the country as an analyst when it comes to these scores. So his quote from the press conference that he did online with a lot of the reporters was, "We're treating these as baseline data, and we're not trying to read too much into them." And the state has said that, again, with the new tests, again, the high school is what we've seen traditionally, but going back to the grades 3 through 8 testing, the next generation testing, they said don't read too much into them. It's hard to judge a trend from only 1 year of testing. So these will be more helpful, I think, over time. But as Dr. Conti's alluded to in the past, especially in the elementary level, we're testing our kids routinely. We have a much better idea of where our kids are at any point in the year because of the benchmark testing that we do along the way. So I don't think we're going to ever see a surprise from our MCAS scores here. That's why last year we were a little bit upset, confused as to what we saw with the writing, because we know writing's been a focus. You've seen the Keys to Literacy comprehension routines have been shared with you, and that helps a lot of kids prepare for their writing. And I know Renee Sacco has done a ton of writing. We've had an outside consultant, Kelly Boswell, that the elementary teachers really like, come in and has done a lot of writing with the kids. So I think you'll continue to see that upward trend with when it comes to ELA at the elementary and writing in particular as we move forward, because it is a focal point and it's something that we're spending a lot of time on. Again, paper copies I think went home last week to families, so they should have those already. And I'll put a link on the website. People can go in and look at all kinds of accountability scores through the Department of Ed site that are public for parents. There's there's report cards, accountability report cards for the district, for each school. But I just want to caution, again, to folks that this is all new information. We're just figuring out, all these different accountability measures and what they mean and how the state came up with, how did we only earn 4 out of 8 points when it comes to students in taking advanced coursework at the high school. So we're still trying to figure out some of that. I think it'll become clearer to us as we move forward. Why did we not meet targets in attendance? Some of those things where our attendance is typically 95%. I would gather that it's because, we don't have a lot of room to go up as far as targets go. But again, this stuff is something we'll see more over time, and we're going to take their advice and try not to read too much into it after just 1 year.
Mrs. Malka?
I have 2 questions so far. First question is, when you looked at these and, came to your conclusions, did you do any looking at, say, tracking last year's 4th grade that had the problem,
Mm-hmm.
and comparing it to this year's 5th grade to give yourself an idea of, was it the technology or?
Yeah, our numbers across the board, I mean, the 4th grade was the best, but that was typical. We saw like a 8 to 10 point swing in the improvement when it came to ELA, elementary, and particularly the writing area.
So do you think that that the problem last year with that dip was technology? Was it that the kids weren't used to it? Or do you think that the scores really were lower last year?
I think the technology had the most to do with it, especially talking to the kids after the fact. So to make a jump like that in 1 year, I think clearly was, a testing environment issue and not the ability of the kids issue.
Okay, so I guess I have more than 2 questions. Did you have any technology issues this year? Because I heard of one at the 7th grade, say maybe 8th grade level. And I wondered if it was just the one student that had a problem or if there was another technology issue.
Again, Bob follows this closely too, but I mean, we had very few. There maybe I remember one isolated student at the middle school that had an issue.
Was there a really cute redhead?
I don't know. I don't have a description, but could have been.
No, again, given the online testing, we'll always have, I'm assuming, every year we'll have some failure. I just think that will be something that we have to make sure that we address. And they have us look at, you get the raw data in July, I think, which is really what we asked the commissioner not to give us the corrections in July, because there's many folks who aren't working here during that time, so hopefully that'll get better. So, Ms. Monica, again, given the new environment, I think we're always going to have some issues. I think the technology is going to get better, but it's certainly not without challenges.
Okay, my other primary question was, have you looked at the scores and developed any ideas or plans for what specific areas you might work on to improve our scores for the next round?
Immediately, when the scores come out, we can get item analysis, which takes you to each standard and shows you where you were in comparison to the state average. So those went out to all the principals, all of our curriculum coaches, department heads at the high school, and they've already had meetings to talk about where their score was maybe. You always look at the plus minus versus the state average as a starting point, because if you see a minus, it's usually a red number on these reports. We don't feel we should be below the state average in anything. No offense to the state average. But we noticed geometry was down in the elementary math. And again, there's not a lot of items that are geometry on the elementary MCAS math. But it's because in our math curriculum, we don't get to geometry typically by the time the kids take the MCAS. So this is where you balance things out. Like for this, maybe 2 questions you're going to get on geometry in grade 4 potentially, do we rush and cram that in, or do we make sure that, we go in depth on the stuff that there's going to be more of? And so those are the questions they struggle with. The teachers, the principals, again, at their grade level meetings. I know Mr. Lyons has already shared some plans that he has at Pine Glen, and again, we did well, but that's typical of what happens every year. Again, I'll send out the item analysis, like I said, to everyone. I was just talking to Mrs. McDonald, I'll meet with individual principals about, do they want to go over and see if they missed anything, a second set of eyes to go through things. So we have those conversations pretty routinely.
So, and Ms. Mauner, I'm going to maybe answer not as nicely, but I don't want to chase.
But I like geometry.
I know, but I don't want to chase.
And I think you should teach a little of it in the elementary schools.
We do, but if
then a little more.
But I'm saying, but if the timing of the test doesn't facilitate it, then I'm saying I think we do an item analysis every year, but for us to change our curriculum every year to try to hope or predict what the questions are going to be, I just think is the wrong strategy. I think in many cases, the MCAS, again, is the least instructional exam, the assessment that we provide. Again, especially at the elementary level, we are providing very targeted assessments for children, and I think if children are making growth in our assessments, then they'll do well on the MCAS. I think, Mrs. Russo, you said this is a building process, I've heard you say, and if, again, we don't have that much mobility in our student body, and if we have 96% of our students in the 2 top performing categories in high school, those are the same kids, coming up. So they get the content they need. I think we certainly look at it. I think if there are huge gaping holes, if we are missing a subject area at a particular grade where we have to make a curricular adjustment, that's fine with me. But I don't want to say, oh, they had, I don't know, but again, geometry might be the best thing. They had 3 geometry questions this year. Boy, let's change our math curriculum, because it's not that simple to do.
But isn't there a standard, a geometry standard?
Yes.
That would be simple enough to meet? I mean, it's got to be really simple things that you could.
After the test is given in the spring.
So I teach this curriculum, and
Yeah.
we literally struggle with this every year. Geometry is, I think, the last topic, 16 or 15 in the book. So we try to give a quick infusion before March, but you're technically not supposed to finish this till May. So in order to take those 2 months worth of curriculum, April and May, and try and backfill it when you're teaching all the other topics is very difficult. We literally struggle with this. How are we going to get even a taste of geometry in there? But as Dr. Conti said, you're kind of guessing, are they going to talk about the lines, the rays, or are they going to talk about holograms?
Maybe you could make it into
it's-
games for the 25 minutes at the beginning of school.
Yeah, it's
Again,
a struggle.
absolutely, that type of stuff is, absolutely true, but it's not simple just to change your scope and sequence, nor
No.
should you, because if you don't teach another topic, but you put geometry in, what if those 4 questions are on the topic that then you moved, and it just, again, I understand the purpose of it, and the purpose of it is to make sure we're delivering the standards that we need to deliver, and I think we are looking at that, and if there are gaping holes that we need to address, we are changing our curriculum over time. But I think we have other measures that I think are better, and I think are more targeted and are more timely, at the elementary level especially, and I think we're beginning to now implement some of those same assessments at the middle level, and I think we know our kids well. And I think MCAS has a purpose, and again, I don't want to sound defensive, I want all of our kids to score perfectly on the MCAS, but the reality is with any standardized test, there's a lot of background knowledge and background information that lends itself to the score, and the students who have that advantage do particularly well. So I think what I got most out of this is a confirmation that we believe it was a technical issue with the exam last year.
That's good.
And I think we're going to continue to look at that. There may be devices that are better suited to the testing, but understand that one of the advantages of us using our iPads is that every kid has one, and we're not testing for 4 weeks. So we are getting to more geometry because we're using a device that we have that's a better instructional device. So again, should we buy a device for every child that's the best device for testing? I would say I'd rather prioritize instruction so the kids are actually learning it. But again, I think that's my value, and I think that we've shared that conversation, and I think there's no measures for the social emotional growth of kids that we're spending a lot of time on today, but we hopefully will see that in their, general success, ability to learn in school and then learn beyond school. So we do take it seriously. I want to make sure I say that. We do look at this stuff, but again, we're covering the state standards, and hopefully our kids will continue to improve, but we're at the very beginning of this adjustment process, and you wait, again, when we have our high school students, or the high school students across the state, let me even say, moving away from a legacy test that they've been using for 20 years, you're going to, again, I'm going to predict, you're going to see a significant drop in high school performance with a new assessment, and that doesn't mean our kids are getting, again, instruction that's not high quality. It's still the same instruction. They're just going to have to adjust to a new modality of test, and then they're going to have to re-standardize. And it's like when they adjust the SAT every once in a while. Not everyone gets automatically smarter or gets less smart because the scores change. They're making some adjustments. So it's going to take us some time.
I have one last question. Can you explain, Patrick, the...
You said Patrick because you don't want me to answer.
That's right. How'd you know? Only kidding.
I know.
You mentioned the advanced courses that there was a gap. We got a 4 out of 8. Can you explain that?
Not well, but so with every different category in this accountability system, there's a amount of possible points you could get. And I'm not sure, I was asking a colleague how they thought they came up with this term, because I think, if I'm not mistaken, the number of kids that are getting out of Burlington High School taking advanced courses, I want to say that I thought the number was like 84% or something. And we scored a 4 out of possible 8 in that measure. So I'm not clear how they came up. They may have, it may be a bell curve, starting at the top, like certain communities where kids scored 8 out of 8 and worked that maybe it was from 100, and because so that's something I'll ask for clarification on when I have a chance to talk to somebody like Bob, how they, again, it's fine, there's a lot of different indicators, and I'm sure there was a system for how they came up with every score, and it's something we're learning as we go right now. The other thing I just wanted to mention, going back to the geometry question to clarify, so grade 4, there's a possible 54 points for all the items on the math MCAS exam. The geometry standard it was 5 of the possible points out of the 54. So that's where, are we going to go back and spend all this time, like how much time for something that's only worth that much and it's not a big part of the grade 4 curriculum, as opposed to measurement and data is worth 11 points, number and operations is worth 17 points, operations and algebraic thinking is worth 11 points. So, and those are the things that we go more in depth on in the 4th grade curriculum. So yes, they definitely will touch upon more geometry this year, I'm sure of it. But the balance, I don't think it'll be a significant increase that they spend on it.
Okay. If you find out the 4
Yes,
out
I will.
of 8 thing, let us know. Thank you.
No, because that's a lot more than 2 questions.
I know. They grew. They sort of
Move the
stretched.
questions.
If I can just piggyback on that, where you'll see the geometry pick up is in the 5th grade. If we're doing our jobs of teaching in, April and May, they will get that geometry, and in 5th grade, those questions should be answered at higher accuracy than the 5th grade. Other question, Ms. Simon?
I actually don't have any questions, but I guess one's a question. I wanted to, they are questions, never mind. I remember hearing anecdotally that last spring in 2018, that the teachers were reporting that the students were using paper for drafts more, somewhat as a consequence of learning the Keys to Literacy strategies. And I want to know if you could just describe, if I'm correct, and if so, just give a brief description of that, because that's another thing that we're doing that helps. If that's what's happening, then it's helping our students develop their writing skills. So is that previously that I had heard the students, and my experience as a teacher is that students wouldn't really write drafts. And so if our students are using that strategy on MCAS, that's, to me, a really good sign. So
it is good, but going back on the legacy MCAS, they used to give you a full session for draft, and then the next full session was to do the completed essay, the writing prompt. But yes, we're especially at the elementary level and the middle school level, the scrap paper that has to be collected and destroyed is significant, because they're using their 2-column notes to sit down and write a plan for themselves to answer the questions. So that, I mean, anytime they have a writing assignment, the teacher spends some time with them organizing their thinking using the key strategies.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that when they have this opportunity to write on something that obviously at the high school anyway is high stakes, they spend more time planning.
Good. And the other thing is that I did actually see your post of the report you just gave us, but could you just state for everyone who's listening where that post is on the website, how to find it?
Sure.
I actually went to look for it, and my iPad
It's on the
didn't let me know.
administration blog under the district tab. So
you go to district, and then you go to administration.
Yeah, let me go right there.
And it's listed as a blog?
Hold on one second. So when you get to the district, and we go to administration, and then our administration blog is on that page.
So it's listed as a blog. Could we, in the long term, develop a section of the website for these kinds of academic reports that could be filed, as opposed to be a blog that's going to disappear into the bottom of the blog?
I'm sure we can organize it any way we want, yeah.
I'd like to request that we organize things like these reports, not as blogs, but as files that get organized in a spot where people can find them on the website, instead of scrolling through all the blogs that you've posted to find it.
Okay.
I'd like it to be organized by topic.
I'll talk to Lauren. I'm not quite sure how to do that, but yeah.
I mean, maybe we need a tab under something that's MCAS. I don't know if it, or perhaps testing, because we have all the other kinds of assessments that we do. Maybe we don't want just MCAS. So I'm not sure what the right answer is, but I would like it organized by category so people can find it by menus and tabs, not by scrolling through blogs. Okay?
Sure.
Does that work? Okay.
I like the testing.
Just a whole testing section would be great.
Assessment, yeah, sure.
Assessment, yep.
And then, before we move on, I just want to say, to me, it's the anecdotal stories that I hear that reinforce what I see in my own children's writing and what I see. Last year, we had an 8th grader going ninth grade, and there were a lot of students taking private school tests, and they, from everyone I spoke to, they did very well. And to me, that's an outside test that is comprehensive of all districts, not just an MCAS, not Burlington. And I heard on 2 different occasions from people that they were told from one very prominent private school that Burlington students know how to write. So I know there's nothing written on that, but it's anecdotal stories of that nature from other parents who are looking outside the district and getting feedback from other types of schools that, to me, solidifies, what we're doing. And I wasn't as panicked with regard to the writing scores as maybe I would have been without hearing from these parents throughout the spring, going through this process with their students. So it sometimes helps to look outside. Not that we want to lose any students, but it is interesting. All right, so Dr. Conti, we are to communication?
Yep, we're going to
Okay.
keep with Patrick. So, again, I'm just going to thank the Burlington Education Foundation. This is their sort of fall community event. I think last year we did screenagers. Is that true? Yes, Patrick? And so this year, Patrick, we have...
We have Keeping Children Safe and Secure Online next Wednesday, October 17th, at 7 p.m. in the Marshall Simons Middle School Auditorium. This presentation is part of a project. It's Project Safe Childhood, and it's put on by the Department of Justice, Department of Homeland Security also, and the Burlington Police are also co-sponsoring this, but it's the Burlington Education Foundation are the folks that brought this to us. They're going to cover being safe and secure online, social media 101, digital footprint, gaming, sexting and cyberbullying, internet predators. It's a town-wide presentation for adults, and babysitting will be available as well. During the day, they're going to have a different version of the presentation that may not be quite so open about some of the things that parents should be concerned about. For the 5th grade students are all going to end over at the middle school, and then the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders will also see it during the day. A different presentation, obviously, because I've been to one of these before for parents, and it just basically raises your eyebrows about what you really need to be, paying attention to as a parent, because I think sometimes, myself included, the students in her room doing her homework and online, and just, we really do have to pay more attention and be aware of some of the things that could be, that could be involved. So trust but verify what your child's up to. And the thing I always, growing up myself, I would have to talk on the telephone in the kitchen, and there'd be a time limit involved. But now, again, the way things have changed dramatically is we're letting the kids go into the room, they're on the internet, I mean, talking about anybody from anywhere. And our kids are great kids, they're trusting kids, and they don't realize that that person on the other end isn't necessarily a 12-year-old from, Massachusetts. So there's some stuff, not, it's infrequent, but if it's something that can protect one of our kids and get one parent to pay more attention to some of the things that they could be getting into online, I think it's time well spent. It's a community conversation too. I think the more of these we have, I think it's something that we owe to the community to be part of these conversations when we support the use of the devices, and high school kids are taking them home with them. I just think it's something we should take the lead on. So thanks to Ellen Ullman and all the people at the Burlington Education Foundation for getting this presentation here. And again, like anything, unfortunately, my experience is this is a challenge to the Burlington parents, but my experience is we don't see turnouts for these things until something bad happens. So let's be proactive and have conversations so we don't have to have one after the fact conversations.
So again, October 17th at 7 p.m. at Marshall Simons Middle School. There is some babysitting provided, and again, love to see some folks there.
Ms. Sun?
Yeah, I was, so I want to clarify, also, you did say this, but it is not the same presentation as last year. The BEF did Screenagers, I believe, which was really valuable, and that did have a full auditorium, and I hope that people will attend this. And in that vein, is it possible for us to post this on the website? Because I don't see it under events, upcoming events. I don't know where else it would be. But could we post it?
It's under district news, I think, right now.
District news. Could we put it on the, so good, so there it is, it's on district news. But I don't, district news, keeping children safe and secure online. Okay, so, so it's under the news, not the calendar. Okay, so I was looking under the calendar, I didn't.
I can certainly be added to the calendar by the person that does that.
I see where it is. And it's not on the front page, but after the October 10th thing, would it show up then on the page by having?
That's a little beyond me, but I could I mean, if we view full calendar, let me see.
It's, well, recent news. There it is. Keeping children safe and secure online. Is that the presentation we're talking about?
Mhm.
That's actually listed as Memorial Elementary School. Is that where it's being held?
Nope.
Okay, so if we could just figure that one out, that'd be great. And maybe even post the, in our packet, we got that nice flyer that the BEF put together that's kind of blue and a little more, grabs people's attention. Maybe we could post that somehow.
It's on Facebook and it's on the blog
It's
as
on
well.
the
yeah.
Facebook and on the blog. Okay, great. That's where I saw it. Okay, so I saw it on the blog. And now we know where it is on the district website, too. Okay, thank you.
Next on the agenda, we have old business. Anything? that we
Just
did?
briefly, Nicole and I have been discussing Mr. Eiler's
Good.
policy, so again, we're not here ready tonight, but I know, just an update, we have been going through the language, trying to decide what's procedure, what's policy, so we'll have some thoughts for the next meeting.
Perfect. Thank you.
With that particular policy, and so I guess that's some old business. And you already mentioned at the start of the meeting that you want some updates, so we'll make sure we include that.
Mrs. Monco?
We did vote the policy, right?
Yes.
Yes.
So I think what you two are working on has to be, unless you want to modify the policy, it has to be procedure.
Right, but you also
Or
talked about
guidelines.
potentially an additional policy where you would add
Oh,
an A
that's
to
right,
it,
that's
or, but again, we were trying to just go through the language to make sure
Yeah,
it's
we're
actually.
talking about a spending policy
Right.
as opposed to what the other one was called.
Right, so
Transfer
that it can actually be
from-
worked, it
Good
can actually
point.
work, so that's,
Good.
so again, we're working on it. That was my update for
Good.
old business.
You didn't forget about it.
Didn't forget.
And Sharon wouldn't let you either.
All right, moving on to new business, special ed program review subcommittee.
Possibly. So thank you,
Okay.
Madam Chair. We have some folks going to Pine Glen, I believe, on October 24th. Is that the date?
Yes.
Going off the top of my head. In the morning, and we have some representatives from the school committee, some representatives from
I've got that for the 23rd. if
23rd,
we're
that is
being
correct.
specific.
Tuesday, the 23rd. I see it on my calendar, so I apologize. So, so some representatives from the Ways and Means Subcommittee. I just think as we've been trying to demonstrate to you what's happening in our classrooms, I think we'd like to do some of that same work with the Ways and Means Committee, so that when we ask for resources, they have a better idea as to what we're asking for. The Developmental Skills Program at Pine Glen, as I mentioned to some committee members, is Mary Hood, our new special ed director, has some concerns about staffing levels. We're sort of bumping up against some of the state limits, Mr. Nelson, that you were mentioning earlier. And I just want folks to have a better idea of the program holistically, so it doesn't seem like I'm sort of asking every single time for sort of additional IA or something here and there. I just think we need to talk about the program holistically, what we want to see, what children we need to educate in the district, and then the needs of those children in that programming. And I think the Pine Glen program will be the first, but I think part of Mary's task this first year is obviously get to know her staff, get to know families, and get to know kids, but she's also doing a whole lot of program evaluation. And I think, Mrs. Monaco, you suggested that it's going to be a pretty intense year or two for Mary, and it may be worthwhile for her to have a subcommittee to deal with, like we've done in other times. I don't think we need to necessarily vote on that tonight, but if you all agree that there's going to be more concentrated work in the area of special education in terms of programming, then again, it might be a direction that you want to go, where you've, again, form a subcommittee, so we're, because I think there's going to be a lot of work done ahead of these meetings, or a lot of work that's going to need to be done before we come to these meetings to discuss the possible implications of that. So
Mrs. Marco?
If I understand what Mary wants to do, it's to evaluate the programs and what they, whether they're in good shape, whether they need changes, whether they need furnishings, whether we need new programs, whether we need extensions of ones that already exist for different grade levels. So it seems to me that if she wants us to be involved, it makes a lot of sense so that we can come back and explain the needs and the benefits versus the, like for instance, keeping kids in district with programs, whether it's more cost effective or less cost effective, et cetera. So I just thought where there are so many programs to look at and evaluate, it would be a good idea to have a subcommittee, and I'll volunteer to be on it.
Yeah, and then obviously we've discussed if you create an elementary program and those kids age out, then at some point it shouldn't be a surprise that we need to develop middle school programming and high school programming. So,
Right.
and I think there are some cost implications to that. And with these type of programming, it's never no cost or cost. It's always sort of how much cost
Right.
and for what quality. And then there's, as you all know, there's placement involves families as well. So it's not just the district making these decisions, but I think we have to make sure of what we're doing and that we're doing it in a way that's high quality and that we're attending to it. Because if left unattended, then I think they just tend to, we try to service too wide a spectrum of kid and then we don't end up serving anybody well. So I just think we have to be careful. And there's always constant evaluation happening, and I just think that it's coming into a new district. I think there's a lot of work to do, that's all.
Ms. Simon?
Yeah, I think it's a great idea, partly because she's new in the district and it gives her an opportunity to review all the programming, and also because, as someone who did work in a number of different school districts have different ways of addressing the same needs or have a slightly different population and may need, even programs that have worked well in the past may need some looking at just to see, is it time to tweak it? Do we have a different type of cohort that's coming up? Are we, meeting the needs of the kids as they get older, like you were saying? So I think it's a really good idea. I'm really glad that Ms. Hood proposes this, and I would also volunteer to be on a subcommittee like that.
We're starting to feel some space issues at the elementary levels as well, so I think we're gonna bump into lots of things.
Yeah.
So
Sure.
when I saw this, I thought this had to do with the coordinated program review. This is strictly a Burlington initiative.
Yeah.
And has no recourse from that.
No, we're having our
Okay.
mid-cycle visit in December, but I'm saying this is
This
gonna be,
is us.
this is
Yep.
us.
Okay, thank you.
It was a brainstorm I had.
Nice.
That's a good idea.
So, thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Could I suggest if people think it's a good idea, should we go ahead and act on it tonight?
The subcommittee appointment?
Or do we
We
need
can,
time
or-
for something else to happen?
We just need, do you want to have members of the Ways and Means Subcommittee as part of it?
Yeah, possibly. Again, I
Yeah.
think.
We should ask them if they'd
we
like
have
to
We
be
have some
part of
time
it.
built into the morning for a visit and then a conversation afterwards, and I think you all could maybe make that suggestion if it's something that they're interested in doing. I think it's an area where there's lots of budgetary pressure on us, and I think it's not going to go away. So I just think the more we can communicate, and again, the better picture that we can paint for people, especially on Ways and Means, I think it's just going to serve us well.
You already set up this first visit.
Yep.
And Ways and Means, at least 2 members are going with us.
Yes, ma'am.
So I think the subcommittee probably going forward for other programs as well as this one should include the Ways and Means Subcommittee because we need their help and their support in any kind of effort that involves money.
So,
Well, Madam Chair, I would suggest that we we continued this discussion to our next meeting, involve Ways and Means with their input, and then vote on it at our next meeting.
Yeah, they should be here because of the.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah, they'll
hopefully
be
they'll
here
be
at
here
the
at our
next
next
meeting.
meeting, if we invite them.
Have that trip out to Memorial and
Pine
come
Glen.
back. Pine Glen, sorry.
Yeah.
Ms. Simon?
Also, I think, I don't know what exactly the right answer is, but we should also consider whether we think it's, depending on the size of the committee, but would it be appropriate to have parents or teachers involved on that kind of a subcommittee to include that kind of community input as well? So that's another thing to think about.
So we'll have a review of this on our next agenda later this month.
It's the same day as the Pine Glen visit is our meeting, right?
Actually, I think it is, yeah.
Yes, we can
So-
report out then, and again, I just, honestly just wanted to start small. I think if we're talking about program creation or changes,
Yeah.
then we would obviously need to work with the PAC on some of those
Right.
things. But I think we might have some more immediate needs that I just think we have to address in the short term. But I know in my conversations with Mary and Patrick's conversations with Mary, she just wants to sort of take a holistic approach as well. I think she's trying to feel out the values of this community, and I think we need to support her in her evaluation of stuff. That's all. So.
Great. Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have the restraint prevention behavior support policy and procedures. First reading.
Again, Special Education Director Mary Hood has submitted a revised, up-to-date restraint prevention and behavior support policy and procedures for first reading, which will replace the current JKAA policy. So the district, again, did have a policy in place. It needed to be updated. The current language was worked on in cooperation with our special ed counsel, who is Tom Nuttall. And so, as this is a first reading, school committee should take this policy under advisement and vote it on at their October 23rd meeting. So again, you have the updated restraint policy.
Ms. Simon?
These are documents that are pretty dense and hard to read, but I have had experience with some of these policies in my previous career, and it looks pretty comprehensive, and my understanding is that as somebody coming in new, Mary Hood has read through our old policy and felt it was lacking and is proposing this. And with you saying that the Special Education PAC has also reviewed it, this is listed here as the JKAA policy, so I am assuming that unlike other times when we get changes to a policy, the changes aren't in a different color, they're just in there, is that correct?
The changes are in there.
So this is the final that you're proposing?
Right, and I'm not sure our former policy was lacking as opposed to the state might have changed
Yeah.
the regulation, and
That's
this is
true.
just a response to those changes.
Right. So even though it says replace the current JKAA and it's still called JKAA, that's the way things are labeled?
Yes.
Okay.
This is going to be the
Okay.
new JKAA that is
Okay.
in compliance with the state regulations.
Right. And you said that the special ed PAC did look through it? or
No,
review-
PAC did not. This was
Oh.
our special ed attorney.
Attorney,
Again, all he
okay,
did was
good.
basically say that I think the regulatory language changed. You need to update in response to that. So
Okay.
this is his recommendation for language. I think it's very similar to the old
Yeah.
language, but I think it incorporates the changes in regulation
Mhm.
that he felt we needed to respond to.
Okay. And it does look good to me from what I can glean from this kind of a dense document, so thank you.
And then next we have out-of-state travel approval.
We do. Patrick has submitted an out-of-state travel request for Renee Sacco and Carrie Fortunato to attend the annual Response to Intervention Best Practice Institute on October 29th through 31st in Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. And this is something they budget for every year. They found this conference to be really helpful in terms of our tiered instructional processes. And again, this is not a first reading, but I would recommend the school committee support this out-of-state travel for Renee and Carrie.
So moved.
Second.
One quick question.
The moved and second, Mr. Nelson?
Patrick, Is this where the first flight took place? Wrights-Beach, North Carolina? Oh, the Kitty Hawk?
Kitty
All
Hawk.
right, Wrights might be close by. All right, that's all I have.
All right, seeing no other discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, passes 500. Is there anything else under new business?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Public participation, dwindling. And lastly, we do have a need for executive session.
Actually, we do not. So
Oh.
I think we're okay.
Sweet.
All right.
I move we adjourn.
Nice.
Got 'em.
Oh, good. It's hard to get
Bugging me
fruit
all day.
flies.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor adjourn?
Aye.
All right.
All those opposed, and it passes 500.